Warning: these social media platforms may be hazardous to your health. Censorship kills. Pain coming. This has been a PSA by Breaking Spectre.
Well, good morning, everybody. How we doing? It is Spectre here on this now the 27th day of October. Month is almost burnt all the way through here. Hopefully you guys are doing well. Got a bright sunshiny day here in the middle part of the country here. Don't know if we're supposed to get some rain here today or not. Be nice to have a little reprieve after almost 4.5, 5 inches over the last several days. A little opportunity to dry out. Hopefully wherever you're at, you're doing well. Getting through the fall time here, the fall time season, getting a little chipper in the morning, about 39 degrees this morning as out traveling about. This morning on the broadcast, got a lot of ground to cover. We're going to hit the old market, see what things are doing there, go through what Alphabet / Google did yesterday by way of their earnings report, a little bit on Twitter, a little bit on Microsoft as well. Talk a little bit about some coffee, jobs, why supply disruptions now will continue, and of course, Thanksgiving upon us, how things are going to fare by way of what we're going to spend this year on Thanksgiving. So stick around. I'll see you back here in just a minute.
Hey everybody, Spectre here. Want to tell you about my Teespring store that I just opened up with a handful of products in that for you guys, the listeners, the audience, those that are in chat on a day in, day out basis. Always appreciate your support, and I figured what the heck, we'll throw some merch out there for you guys. And so obviously with YouTube and Earth shenanigans as of late, I'm going to be looking to expand to other platforms, and well, that all comes at a cost, so I figured what the heck. That being said, I got some t-shirts and that out here. You can see those in black, white, and gray. Spectre Does News. Got a water tumbler, 20 ounce there. Got a coffee mug you can get in black or white. And of course, we got the Let's Go Brandon #FJB shirt, which you can also find in black, white, or gray. Right now, you can find that all over at https specters-storefront.creator-spring.com. That's https://specters-storefront.creator-spring.com. Thank you for your support.
All right, welcome back. Before we start, I think I'll take a look at the old weather across the old U.S. Looks like we got an interesting band of stuff coming across the Midwest here by radar here today, so not sure if that'll hit here a little bit later in the morning, a little bit later in the afternoon here in the middle part of the country, but nonetheless, looks like we got some storms headed our way. And of course, looking off the old eastern seaboard over here, I believe this must be the old bomb cyclone and that was mentioned, the second in as many weeks. Last week we had the one up in the northwest. Now I believe New Jersey had yesterday declared a state of emergency ahead of this little guy heading this way here today. Not sure how much rain is expected to dump over there, but nonetheless, if you're on the East Coast, you may want to situate yourself accordingly. All right, this morning on the broadcast, futures slip from all-time highs amid fresh China growth and valuation concerns. This is one day after U.S. equity futures hit an all-time high, rising to a record 45.90. Risk sentiment has reversed and overnight index futures fluctuated, and stocks in Europe retreated from a near record on Wednesday after a flare-up in U.S.-China tensions. Signs of further regulatory crackdowns from Beijing, a decline in commodity prices, renewed concerns about economic growth, and a rise in short-dated U.S. Treasury yields doused the equity market rally on Wednesday. At 7:45 a.m. Eastern, Dow E-minis are up 27 points or 0.07%. S&P 500 E-minis were down 2.5 points or down about 0.06%. NASDAQ 100 E-minis down 15.5%, or 15.5 points rather, 0.09%. Bonds and the dollar gained and Bitcoin stumbled. Of course, there we see the graphic of the old E-mini S&P futures. The overnight losses started earlier in Asia, where tech stocks suffered hefty falls after China's internet watchdog said it planned stricter registration rules for younger net users. All Chinese tech shares slid on concerns about more scrutiny from Washington after the U.S. banned China Telecom American business. U.S. futures also turned negative as the bullish mood over Tuesday's forecast beating results from Google owner Alphabet and Microsoft started to wane. So taking a look at those, and I will highlight these, a little bit here momentarily. Microsoft shares gained 2.2% in pre-market after first quarter results. Is that first quarter or third quarter? I don't know, maybe their quarters are different. First quarter results that analysts said were very strong across the board, showing scale and justifying the valuation of the software giant. Alphabet, aka Google, rises 1.3% after third quarter earnings earned a mostly positive reception from analysts, with at least 3 raising their price targets on the Google parent. Twitter adds 2% amid resilient third quarter sales at the social media company as it weathers Apple's new limits on consumer data collection. Enphase gains 13% after its third quarter results and fourth quarter forecasts beat estimates. Analysts await more clarity on supply chain constraints. Robinhood also announced yesterday, not going to talk too much about them other than here, they slumped 12% as some analysts cut price targets after the retail brokerage reported third quarter revenue that missed estimates and flagged further weakness in fourth quarter. And judging by what I read yesterday, it was pretty much terrible for Robinhood. Visa falls 2.4% as analysts flag a disappointing outlook from the payments company. Texas Instruments declined 4% after a forecast that may disappoint some investors who are concerned about a potential slowdown in demand for electronic components. Watch peers for a read across. Angion plunges 55% after company said a kidney transplant drug failed to meet primary endpoints in a phase 3 trial. European partner Vifor slips 6%. So aside from that, flashing ahead here, Deutsche Bank's AG dropped more than 6% after disappointing earnings, while Banco Santander SA declined despite a bullish outlook. Heineken NV fell after reporting a drop in demand for beer. BASF SE slipped after flagging dwindling returns on its core suite of chemical products as sputtering global supply catches up with demand. GlaxoSmithKline plc rose after improving its profit outlook. Dutch semiconductor equipment maker ASM International NV advanced after revenue forecasts beat analyst estimates. Puma SE gained after raising full-year profit forecasts. And Temenos AG surged as much as 16% after Bloomberg reported EQT AB is exploring an acquisition of the Swiss banking software specialist. And some other notables here. The market snapshot, S&P 500 futures little changed at 45.69 and 0.75. Stocks Europe 600 down 0.3% to 474 and change. Nikkei little changed at 29,098 and change. Shanghai Composite down 1% to 3562 and change. Looks like German 10-year yield fell 4 basis points to negative 0.157%. Euro little changed at 1.1593. Brent futures down 1.1% to 85.46 a barrel. Gold spot down 0.5% to 1784.14 per ounce, and U.S. dollar index little changed at 93.98. And of course, this after gold obviously had just breached the 1800 mark here as of late, and we'll have to see if that marches back upwards or not. Top overnight news out of Bloomberg. Chinese authorities told billionaire Hui Ka-yan to use his personal wealth to alleviate China Evergrande Group's deepening debt crisis, according to people familiar with the matter. Mind you, this guy is only worth about $7-8 billion on top of the fact that Evergrande owes, north of about $200-300 billion. Just a drop in a bucket. Germany cut its 2021 growth outlook to 2.6% compared with a prediction of 3.5% published at the end of April, reflecting a scarcity in some raw materials and rising energy prices, particularly for gas. Economy Minister Peter Altmaier said Wednesday in an interview with ARD television. China plans to limit the price miners sell thermal coal for as it seeks to ease a power crunch that's prompted electricity rationing and even caused a blackout in a major city last month. The S&B stressed that in light of the highly valued currency and the degree of economic slack, expansive monetary policy needs to be maintained, according to an account of President Thomas Jordan's meeting with the Swiss government. Sweden's National Debt Office is reducing its bond borrowing in both kroner and foreign currency because central government finances are recovering faster than expected from the pandemic, according to a statement. Out of News Squawk and back over to Asia. China agrees plan to cap key coal price to ease energy crisis. The China tech stock slump as tensions with U.S. spook investors. Top court orders probe of India's alleged Pegasus use. And Tokyo Stock Exchange to extend trading day by 30 minutes. Wonder what's going on there. Interesting. European news. Deutsche Bank falls. Results fail to provide fresh catalyst. BASF, as we already talked about, points to chemical price surge easing as supply increases. S&B's Jordan stressed need for loose policy in government meeting. And UK's Sunak set to cut tax on domestic flights, according to the Independent. Pretty light day on the old event calendar. A lot of things here at 8:30 a.m. this morning. September durable goods orders estimate down 1.1%. Prior was up 1.8. Durables less transportation estimate was 0.4. Prior a 0.3. September cap goods orders non-defense ex-air estimate was a 0.5 versus a 0.6. Cap goods, ship non-defense ex-air estimate of 0.5%, prior was a 0.8. Also, September retail inventories month-over-month estimate of 0.2, prior was a 0.1. Wholesale inventories month-over-month estimate 1% versus a 1.2. And September advanced goods trade balance estimate down 88.3 billion, prior was down 87.6 billion, later revised to 88.2. So that's a quick look through what is going on in the old markets here today. And of course, today being Wednesday, here we are. We've got a few before markets open. Boeing reporting, GM, Coke, McDonald's, Spotify, Six Flags, UMC to name a few. And then we got a few after the bell today. We got Ford. Looks like we got Twilio. eBay, just to name a few of the big heavyweights in that on there. So I'll be keeping an eye on those here a little bit later on as well. So, how did we fare yesterday? Well, a couple of them that came through. Microsoft shares surge after the cloud-driven top and bottom line beats after reporting yesterday. I had an initial shrug. Shares are surging after hours, up over 2%. The bottom line on this, they had a revenue of $45.3 billion, which was up 22% year over year, better than the 21% in the prior quarter. Estimate was $43.94 billion, a range 42.68 to 44.77. Earnings per share 271 versus 182 year over year versus an estimate of 207. A couple interesting things here. Digital technology is a deflationary force in an inflationary economy. Businesses, small and large, can improve productivity and the affordability of their products and services by building tech intensity, said Satya Nadella, Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of Microsoft. The Microsoft Cloud delivers the end-to-end platforms and tools organizations need to navigate this time of transition and change. Priced for perfection? Yeah, interesting. So that was Microsoft. As far as Google, aka Alphabet, they dropped despite beating on revenue and earnings as their cloud disappoints. So as you can see, most of these tech folks are all moving toward cloud interface. Revenue was up 65.12 billion, up 5.2% quarter over quarter, beating the estimate of 63.39. So it looks like if you kind of see the bolded items here, they've got as many beats as misses throughout here. Their Google Services revenue, 59.88 billion, up 4.9%. Google Cloud revenue up, well, that was coming in about almost 5 billion, up 7.8% quarter over quarter, but that was a miss. Other bets revenue, 182 million, that was down 5.2% quarter over quarter, and that was a miss. Earnings per share $27.99 versus $16.40 year over year. That was a beat. Operating income $21.03 billion. There we go, up 88% year over year. That was a beat as well. Google Services operating income $23.97 billion. That was up for quarter over quarter. Google Cloud operating loss $644 million. That was 9% quarter over quarter. Other bets operating loss $1.29 billion, down 7.9% quarter over quarter. And of course, operating margin 32% versus 24%. And CapEx at $6.82 billion, which was up 26% year over year, missing the estimate of 6.9. And so there's some of the visuals. Let's see. Also worth highlighting, Google's workforce rose by 18,000 to just over 150,000 people. As Bloomberg notes, much of that growth likely went to its cloud division. So again, a lot of focus on cloud computing. Commenting on the results, CFO Ruth Porat said, "Our consistent investments to support long-term growth are reflected in strong financial performance, with revenues of $65.1 billion in the quarter. We continue to deliver across our businesses by providing helpful and valuable experiences for both consumers and our partners." So that, in a nutshell, is Google. They're still on the march. And of course, Twitter. Well, they shrug off Apple's privacy impact and meet expectations for revenues and monthly average users. Their revenue came in at $1.284 billion versus the $1.285 as expected. Monetizable daily active users up 5 million to 211 million versus 211.9 million as expected. I guess no word on how many conservatives they've dumped off the platform to see how negatively that may have impacted that number. Because of the legal settlement, a one-time litigation-related net charge of $766 million related to an $809.5 million settlement the company announced in September for allegedly misleading investors about user growth, Twitter reported a net loss of $537 million compared to a profit of $29 million a year ago. Whoops. Their ad revenue rose more than 41% to $1.14 billion, total ad engagements increasing 6%. Proud of third quarter results, Dorsey said, improving personalization, facilitating conversation, delivering relevant news, and finding new ways to help people get paid on Twitter, for those who are still left. And by the way, I'm sure many folks are probably jumping off the platform due to the heavy hand of censorship going on over there and finding alternatives. Hey, Truth Social's coming out soon, so who knows? All right, so outside of that, Robusta coffee prices hit decade high as supply woes mount ahead of peak demand season. And if you've been with the broadcast for a while, you know that we've talked quite a bit about the coffee prices net over the last several months. A lot of issues net down in Brazil, especially with cold snaps and droughts and things of that nature, and that's still having a knock-on effect. Says Robusta coffee prices soared to decade's high Tuesday, spurred by dwindling stockpiles ahead of peak coffee season. January futures in London rose more than 5% to 23.25 per ton, the highest price level since September 2011. Arabica coffee prices also rose 2.4% in New York. The tightening supply of Robusta coffee beans, generally used for instant coffee, is making it difficult to get hold of immediate delivery coffee, Kona Hawk said of the head of research at commodity trader ED&F Man in London, told Bloomberg. Winter is coming in Europe, which is peak coffee drinking season. That is a time when the roasters want to be sure that warehouses are suitably supplied with coffee, Hawk said. In South America, you're also finding that much of the Robusta crop is being consumed internally, which is inevitable when you have a shortage of Arabica beans. Dwindling supplies of the beans have been due to devastating drought and frost in Brazil this year. The South American country is the world's largest coffee producer. As for the world's second largest coffee producer, Vietnam, sky-high container costs and congestion at ports hinder stockpiles drawdown. Cheaper Robusta coffee beans, used widely in instant coffee beverages such as Nestle's, SA's, Nescafe brands, are sold out in Brazil. After drought and frost-ruined crops of the higher-end Arabica variety, favored by cafes like Starbucks, local roasters are racing for Robusta replacements and driving prices to new records each day, Bloomberg recently wrote. Last month, Nestle SA's CFO Francois Xavier Roger revealed the company is bracing for cost inflation to worsen into 2022. Spiking commodity prices like Robusta and Arabica, plus soaring transportation, labor, and packaging costs, will be pushed along to consumers in the form of higher coffee prices. Says if we look at 2021, it was certainly much more about dairy and meat and grains. Next year, it'll be more about coffee as well. But once again, the large part cannot be hedged, which has to do with transportation, which has to do with packaging material, Roger told Barclays Global Consumer Staples Conference. Earlier this year, we warned readers that cheap coffee is no more, and a global deficit is coming. Coffee prices may still have higher to climb. So, yes, as I have warned, as I've come across the articles, chances are you probably want to get your coffee stockpiled now. Outside of that, jobs growth is booming in Florida. No surprise there, as the migration out of blue states continues unabated. And we get this out of the Epoch Times. It says jobs in Florida are growing much faster than the national rate, according to a September employment report. The office of Governor Ron DeSantis estimated the job growth at 3 times that of the nation. Florida has recorded 17 months of continued private sector job growth. The Sunshine State gained 84,500 jobs in September, with 73,000 of those in the private sector, according to the governor's office. The figures showed an increase of 5.6% compared to the same time last year. In a press release, the governor's office said Florida's labor force increased by 540,000 over the year, with 423,000 of that increase occurring in the last 6 months. Most jobs were created in the leisure and hospitality industry, adding 26,600 positions. Trade, transportation, and utilities gained 19,200 jobs. Professional and business services added 10,400. Construction went up 6,900, and education and health services increased by 6,300 jobs. Figures from the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity show that there are more than 520,000 jobs listed online, giving Floridians a wide choice of work opportunities. The FDEO Secretary Dane Eagle said these figures demonstrate the success of the state's Return to Work initiative, as Florida's unemployment rate has lowered over the year, decreasing by 2.3 percentage points. Florida continues to provide meaningful job opportunities for individuals moving to our state and entering our labor force, Eagle said in a written statement. With our unemployment rate decreasing and labor force increasing, we will work to further this great success by making investments that continue to strengthen our economy and increase our state's resiliency. Governor Ron DeSantis said he is pleased with what he is seeing with growth and added it was not an easy task to achieve considering the national economic climate and inflation. Despite tremendous national headwinds and economic uncertainty, Florida has reached a level of job growth only seen on 4 other occasions in the past 30 years, DeSantis said in a press release. We will continue to work hard to keep Florida open, free, and built for opportunity. The department reports that Florida's unemployment rate of 4.9% for September 2021 dropped a tenth of a percentage point from August 2021. While Florida has seen consistent gains in the labor force, the nation saw a drop in job growth rates. Well, gee, I wonder why that is. Try and hold the rest of the country hostage, especially in the blue states, and offer Nancy Antoinette's crumbs off her table in the form of stimmy checks. What do you think is going to happen? And wasn't DeSantis one of those that basically cut that off and says, hey, if you're going to get those stimmy checks, you better be looking for a job? And it looks like it's paid dividends, hasn't it? So outside of that, Lysa plane disruptions will persist. Had a lot to say about that over recent weeks. Just in time is a production model used by companies to create items for immediate demand. The point of JIT is to avoid the waste associated with overproduction. But when supply chains snarls appear, JIT has become a significant headache for U.S. companies such as Ford, who has had to shutter multiple vehicle plants because of their inability to source semiconductor chips. Companies are rethinking their production model to just-in-case inventory, a more suitable model in today's challenging environment that allows more inventory to be stored and will help ensure future orders are filled. JIT still dominates the corporate world, but JICI could make a strong comeback due to global uncertainties. Bloomberg has provided an in-depth view of various U.S. industries and their potential disruptions in foreign supplies. So here we see a little bit of a graphic here. Let's see. Maybe I can bring that down. Contribution of foreign supply chain to U.S. final demand. We got textiles, base metals, electrical equipment, motor vehicles, computers, coke, refined petro products, wood products, etc., all the way down here. And it looks like, we kind of see the effects of domestic versus China and the light blue all the way through there. So very interesting. It says foreign supply chain production is the largest in textiles, base metals, electrical equipment, motor vehicles, and electronics. Many of these industries are entirely reliant on production from China. The problem with that is Beijing has ordered energy-intensive factories to shutter operations to conserve electricity amid a massive energy crunch. This will complicate the picture for firms that source a majority of their goods from the country. On top of this all, port congestion on either side of the Pacific continues to increase to record levels. JIT is a flawed production model when supply chains break. Maybe companies will learn to transition to JICI and hold inventory in case of a rainy day. For more insight on when global supply chain bottlenecks will subside, Dubai's DP World, one of the biggest international port operators, Chairman and CEO Sultan Ahmed bin Saliem told Bloomberg earlier this month that disruptions could last for another 2 years. The global supply chain was in crisis at the beginning of the pandemic, bin Saliem said. Maybe in 2023 we'll see an easing. So, the complex interconnectedness of the global supply chain combined with just in time is a recipe for disaster in today's brave new world. This suggests that more U.S. corporates could embrace JICI and diversify their supply chains away from China to mitigate risk. And that's absolutely true. Having lived through that in the days of living in the corporate world, I've experienced that myself, and that, yes, you pigeonhole yourselves into a spot. And of course, if you find the lowest cost provider at all costs to maximize profitability, guess what happens? Especially today. If that goes down, well, then you're pretty well screwed, and you better hope that you got a backup that isn't also equally impacted. But, as many will well know from the corporate inside, obviously all this inventory affects the bottom line as well. So even GICI is going to have an effect on the corporate's bottom line because that's extra inventory that they're going to carry that's going to have a negative impact on profitability. So, nonetheless, interesting concept. We'll have to see whether or not corporates decide to play that game or not. Alright, so this year's Thanksgiving dinner will be the most expensive in history. Thanksgiving Day, an annual national holiday in the U.S., began as a way to celebrate the harvest and other blessings of the past year. Nowadays, people celebrate the holiday with massive feasts and watch football. But one thing consumers won't be giving thanks to this year is soaring food inflation that would make Thanksgiving 2021 one of the most expensive on record. When you go to the grocery store and it feels more expensive, that's because it is. Veronica Nye, senior economist at the American Farm Bureau Federation, told CBS News. She said food prices in 2021 jumped 3.7% versus a 20-year average of 2.4%. Turkeys and all the trimmings will cost 4% to 5% more this year than a year ago. Rising food prices have been an ongoing issue since the beginning of the scamdemic, as disrupted supply chains and adverse weather conditions around the world have made supplies of crops dwindle. Global food prices are at a fresh decade high and have begun to hit the wallets of consumers. September's Consumer Price Index for food was up 4.6% from a year ago. Prices for meat, poultry, fish, and eggs were up the most, soaring more than 10%. The rise in food prices has spooked the Biden administration. Yeah, remember back around, what was it, the 4th of July? they tried to snow us over and say, oh, it doesn't cost you any more to throw, some things on the old grill. Cheese was up and that was about it. Yeah, right. Just like Fed Powell saying that all this stuff is quote unquote transitory, using air quotes behind the scenes here. Several factors contribute to food inflation, including supply chain snarls, higher transportation costs, and labor shortages. Next year, food inflation may rise further as fertilizer prices jump. Ag is like everybody else. It's impacted by the supply restraints we've seen, Nye said. She said 10% of food costs only come from farming, while the rest, 90%, are trucking, wages, distribution, and warehousing. Besides soaring food costs, consumers may experience widespread supply chain challenges that could make certain food items critical for Turkey Day harder or impossible to find because of shortages. Dr. Krishnakumar S. Davi, president of IRI Client Engagement, published a note explaining IRI's basket of availability, demand, price, and promotion for Thanksgiving is recording significant out-of-stock rates on several Thanksgiving-related grocery categories at this time. According to Consumer Reports, there is some good news. Turkeys in all sizes will be in abundance. But there's a dark side to Thanksgiving this year. That is, an income inequality story, which means the top 10% of Americans will be spending more, while the working poor might skip the holiday entirely due to affordability issues. So there you have it. Obviously, inflation, not transitory, going to have a impact on food prices. And as noted with the coffee-related stuff, obviously that is probably going to be with us here for a period of time. So probably not just this year. Chances are we may continue to see that into next year. All right, so outside of some financials here today, we get this out of the Right Scoop. Says outrageous. Minnesota School Board requires parents give their home address or they won't be allowed to speak. I wonder if the old school boards are getting a little nervous and they plan on retaliating or something against parents who maybe speak a little tersely to them? Is that the whole idea? I mean, we've seen enough of these around the country over recent months. Chris Rufo posted a video tonight from a school board meeting in Monaco, Minnesota, where the school board is requiring parents to reveal their addresses in order to address the school board. It says, outrageous. Minnesota School Board prohibits parents from criticizing individual school officials and forces public commenters to reveal their home address, exposing them to potential harassment and property damage.
I just want to remind everyone this is a business meeting of the school board. It is not a meeting that belongs to the public. Each speaker is asked to state his or her name and address for the record. Failure to do so will result in an individual not being allowed to speak. John, can you give us your name and address, please?
My name is John Wicklund. I live in Mankato.
Could I get your address, please, John?
I'd rather not, since you guys
Don't
have
give
it
your
already.
address, you can't speak.
And I get so much property damage and eggs and everything else from fun people and their friends.
John,
happening to be on the
you need
school
to
board.
give your address.
All right, I live on 5th Street.
Excuse me?
I live on 5th Street.
House number? Thank you.
All right. So are our kids safe?
Effective tonight, the school board will enforce the following guidelines. Open forum participants are prohibited from calling out or addressing any individual school board or school district staff member. If this occurs, open forum will be closed and the individual will not be allowed to participate in future open forums. Crowd noise or any sort of grandstanding during open forum, including applause, talking, hollering, or any outbursts will result in open forum being closed. Further, beginning at the November 1st school board meeting, open forum participation will be limited to those individuals who wish to speak to an item on the board agenda. The board agenda is always made available the Thursday prior to our meetings, and they are always on the district website.
Sounds to me like they might be just a little bit scared of the folks and their displeasure. So apparently we got to put some rules in place for the plebes to, prevent any sort of backlash to the lords on high sitting behind the desk, huh? Says the father in the video clearly doesn't want to give his address, but school board member Jody Sapp compels him to reveal his house number and street or says he can't speak. Reluctantly, the father reveals it and Sapp repeats over the microphone for everyone to hear. Mission accomplished. I think Rufo has it exactly right about this when he says it exposes parents to potential harassment and property damage. It is absolutely a despicable intimidation tactic by the school board to keep parents from speaking out. And if they do dare to speak out, activists will know where to find them. Yeah, and so I would say when they file the old police report, they should send the old bill over to the school board because where else would they get that information from? So there should be some level of liability put back on them, shouldn't there? Nonetheless, over to the Blaze. Dr. Birx claims Trump was distracted by the election, says coronavirus deaths could have been lower. Oh my. Talk about pot calling kettle black here. Old Birx, who skirted her own edicts and decrees. And if you remember right, what was it, last year? She took off to the old Hamptons or whatever with her family. And of course, all sorts of pictures of her unmasked and not socially distanced. Yeah. Former coronavirus advisor Dr. Deborah Birx testified that coronavirus deaths could have been far lower under the Trump admin, but that White House officials were distracted by the election. Birx made the comments during closed-door testimony before the House Select Subcommittee on the coronavirus crisis earlier in October. Excerpts from her testimony were published Tuesday by the Washington Compost. I felt like the White House had gotten somewhat complacent through the campaign season, and I wanted to make sure that as soon as everybody was back the day after the election that people would comprehensively re-engage, Birx said during her testimony. She went on to say that about 100,000 deaths during the Trump admin could have been avoidable. Did they really exist, or were they propped up, skewed numbers? There's that argument to be made as well. Says, I believe if we had fully implemented the mask mandates, a reduction in indoor dining, the getting friends and family to understand the risk of gathering in private homes, and we had increased testing, that we probably could have decreased fatalities into the 30% less to 40% less range, Birx told the panel. And what did I just say? Wasn't she caught, subverting her own rules? She also criticized the admin for listening to other voices who were skeptical about the efficacy of official social distancing guidelines. Where's the studies again? Oh, do I think that we could have done more on unified messaging coming out of the White House? Birx asked rhetorically. Do I think we could have done more on very early on showing the efficacy of masks? Yes, and I think that would have decreased the confusion. And by the way, how many studies are out there about masks? And what does it say right on the side of an N95 box, by the way? Despite her critical comments, many on the left excoriated Birx for not speaking out against Trump while she was still in the administration. Trump enablers like her are trying to rehab their image through media hits and book deals. Do not let them. Dr. Scarves, why the F didn't you expose him a year ago? Tweeted activist Lindy Lee. She sat there and supported him and did nothing except change her effing scarf. She's no better than him, read another popular tweet. Coronavirus cases and deaths appear to have plateaued from a recent spike due to the Delta variant. So Birx apparently having to get herself out there, rehabbing her image. Who knows where the heck this lady is going to pop up next. But yeah, of course, it's all BS. And last but not least on the morning, Rumble acquires locals to give creators an alternative to big tech. And of course, if you remember right here, late last week, early part of this week, Trump's new social media platform through his DWAC SPAC, obviously taking off 700-800% and throwing all sorts of cash to a potential new social media platform. Rumble apparently is stepping up as well. Rumble says the acquisition will help build a bigger creator economy. Alternative video sharing platform Rumble has acquired the community generation platform Locals in a deal that its CEO Chris Pavlovsky says will build the rails to a new tech ecosystem that will free everyone from the restraints of editorial control. Rumble has grown significantly in 2021. In September, it hit a new traffic record and entered the top 150 most visited websites in the U.S. It's also snagged big names and secured investment from several conservative venture capitalists this year. Locals has seen consistent traffic growth throughout 2021 and recently partnered with Rumble so that its members could easily set up paid communities on Locals via an integrated button. Both platforms will keep their own websites but share communities and data operations. Buying Locals furthers Rumble's mission of giving creators unprecedented autonomy over their work, while providing audiences with quality content, Rumble said in a blog post. Rumble is already one of the most respected independent and privately owned companies in the online video sharing platform industry. Acquiring Locals is part of Rumble's broader effort to build a creator economy that fosters creative independence. Pavlovsky added that Locals will give Rumble users a new way to generate revenue, one that is not influenced by corporate advertisers and special interests. Rumble will be using its cloud infrastructure to integrate Locals with its existing platform. The integration will allow Rumble and local creators to easily link their accounts and display a red Locals button on every Rumble video. Local CEO Asaf Lev said, "We are excited to see Locals continue our growth and vision as part of Rumble. Together, we are building a new ecosystem for creators." Locals founder Dave Rubin added that the acquisition will help the companies, quote, build a parallel internet based on free speech using cutting-edge tech and innovation, end quote. Political commentator and Rumble investor Dan Bongino, who helped broker the deal, told the Washington Examiner that the rise of cancel culture was a big driver for the acquisition and said that those pushing cancel culture are incentivizing this and the next generation of creators to bypass the middleman of big tech platforms and streaming services. The acquisition follows the world's biggest video sharing platform, YouTube, continuing to censor its users, with this censorship even extending to elected officials. Both Rumble and Locals have vowed to let their creators speak freely in the face of this censorship, which has led to many creators switching to these alternative platforms and praising their free speech stance. As creators have flocked to Rumble and Locals, both companies have introduced numerous new features to give creators new ways to create and promote their content and generate revenue. Rumble has added live streaming, live tipping, live chat, and more. Locals has also introduced live streaming and live tipping. So there you have it. In a nutshell, Rumble, obviously.
Hey everybody, Spectre here.
This
Want
would
to
be
tell you about
something
my
that I
Teespring
would
store that I
probably
just
head
opened
toward
up with
as
a
well.
handful of products and
And,
that for you guys that listen.
Obviously as a creator and that, having lived through censorship for the better part of 3+ years of doing this now, even just recently on my own channel here, it's needed. It's going to be needed. We're going to need a lot more than just Rumbles and Locals and everything else. And I'll probably talk a little bit more about that here a little later on today over on the 5x5 channel. I'll be over there at 3 p.m. today. I have a lot more news to get through. But yeah, there's some other platforms that are up and comers as well. We'll have to see where this goes, but YouTube obviously not very favorable to those of us who wish to speak truth. And of course, anytime you skirt around talking about coronavirus that goes against the grain, obviously you'll just get hit with the ever famous now medical misinformation with no regard as to what specifically it was the problem. That's kind of their catch-all. So, nonetheless, that's going to do it for the broadcast here this morning. Appreciate you guys tuning in. As always, I'll be back here tomorrow morning here for the show. Otherwise, like I said, you can catch me over on the 5x5 channel here starting off at 3 p.m. Eastern, and we'll give it a go over there. All right, well, take care, and God bless everybody.